Once again, hello and welcome to today's Ask the Expert session. Today's subject is managing your code and deployments using Maven. We've got Rakesh Talanki and Diego Zuluaga from Apigee's Principal Architects team, consulting team, here to present about Maven today. Before we get started, I'm going to give just a brief introduction and talk a little bit about the format. Once again, the format is a brief presentation with ample time for question and answers. Again, this is your call, so please do ask questions, and you can post your questions throughout the session in the GoToWebinar chat/question window. The webcast session will be recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording within probably 3 to 5 days after we conclude this broadcast. Having said that, I'd like to introduce Rakesh Talanki and Diego Zuluaga to present today. Take it away, guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diego from Apigee Customer Success. I work as a principal architect, and I'm joined by my colleague Rakesh.
Hey guys, same here. Diego and I are colleagues. We work in customer success team. I also work as a principal architect.
All right. So before we get started today, we're going to cover a few topics. We're going to provide the first topic will be a little bit of a context around the phases of the build process, specifically how build can quickly spin out of control and some of the techniques that developer teams can use to mitigate any risk on something called the build hell. The next section will be what's in it for me, right? We're going to introduce the Apigee Deploy Maven plugin as a standard and extensible utility to the build process. And we are going to explain its benefits and any potential challenges ahead. The third part is about we're going to provide a brief demo and show you how to get started with the plugin by providing you with the resources so you can hit the ground quickly. And then we will move on to the questions that were uncovered throughout the presentation. So with that, let's get started. The first part is we want to give a little bit of a context. Want to make sure that we set the ground and show you what's happening in most of development teams these days. And so the reality is that software development in general, without the right tool, is more challenging than it should be. And with the current methodologies, Agile or Waterfall, and the introduction of test-driven development, behavior-driven development, are now enabling many organizations to get faster time to market, but which means that releases now occur not only monthly, they can be bi-weekly, daily, or even multiple times a day. So it's tough to keep up with this pace. And if we take a look at the tasks that are required for API deployment, the steps that are required before code gets shipped into an environment, be it development, QA, staging, or production, it needs to go through a build process which executes the following tasks. So you have to clean API bundles, the files and folders. You have to copy the artifacts. You have to configure the artifacts and for each environment, development, QA, staging, production, or many other that you have. Then you have to package those artifacts, delete the last deployment from the gateway, import and deploy API bundles to the gateway, execute unit tests, execute functional tests, execute performance tests, deploy test documentation on content management system, and many other tasks that you have that are customized to your environment, right? It's driving crazy many of the teams, and there are ways to automate this tedious work. Many teams sometimes handle all these tasks manually, but there are consequences of manually doing this manually. In fact, between 30% and 59% of users are still carrying these tasks manually in many development teams, not talking about Apigee in particular. So what is the first reaction that happens for an API team, right? So we software engineers love solving problems, and we start kind of like thinking, okay, let's automate with in-house tools. And then we start thinking, okay, let's go with Java. Why not Python? Maybe Groovy, JavaScript, Ruby, C Shell, Bash, C#, F#, Corn Shell, Perl, you name it, right? You have many options out there, which is great. But for many developers, what happens is that everyone has a different approach. And if you have is a hammer, everything looks like an L. So you probably start developing solutions in one specific language, and that can become a problem. So some of the, as we mentioned before, it's that the reality is that nobody writes perfect code the first time. So the tools that we create, sometimes somebody needs to maintain them. There is no open source community around them, and they need to go through a QA process, but we don't have that team, right? The tools that we write for automating our task are not, they don't usually go through a QA process. So yeah, it's tough, and they have bugs as well, and somebody needs to maintain them. So they are good for specific purposes. So the shell scripts that we create, all these tools that we create are good for specific purposes. But down the road, when we start thinking about, okay, let's get this into continuous integration or continuous delivery system, we find that some of these tools start conflicting, or they don't integrate that well. So that's one of the biggest advantages of having a platform for it.
Yes, just to add to Diego, what Diego is saying, one step takes you to another step, so the fundamental step is to have a good built-in deployment process, and that will lead to having a good automated JUnit run test cases. That will lead to doing continuous delivery, and that will lead to faster delivery of a product into production. That means you're pushing new functionality more quickly. So one step will lead to the other. The basic step is to have a good built-in deployment process.
That's right. So and on top of that, one of the issues is by having to maintain in-house scripting tools is that you have your team dedicated for the API development, and now you have the same team also in charge of these scripting tools. And it becomes a burden over time that you need to maintain them. Some of these steps of the process have been already defined, they have been already tested, so why reinventing the wheel creating these tasks? So that's the task that Apigee has done by creating the Apigee bundle, deploy bundle.
Yeah, so what the other advantage of using Apigee bundle is we're constantly revising this, making it better and better, because we are using this across multiple customers. So people are contributing, and it's a public repo now. So people are contributing back into this repo. So when you get these tools, you know, you might have a little bit of starting trouble, but once you get it, you got a very good starting point.
That's right. So what is the first reaction of everybody's team? That you enter into an analysis paralysis. Yeah, too many roads, but you need to start somewhere, right? And that's why Apigee has created the Apigee Deploy Maven plugin. Yes, this is great. We love it. And with that, we just want to get into the what's in it for me, right? As a developer, why should I care about these tools, right? The thing is, as a developer and as a product owner, why should I care about my team having these tools? The first thing is that you have more time to focus on what really matters by automating repetitive tasks, which translates in having your development team focus on building more awesome features, faster, better, and stronger. And this can only be achieved by releasing your developers from repeatable tasks and allowing them to work on tasks that are human replaceable. Other benefits of having some like this machinery in place is that you can extend even further. So you can, innovation ready means that you can extend this with custom scripts. You are not constricted to the tools that come with the plugin. You can extend it even further in any language. And you can achieve any level of orchestration because it runs in a platform that allows you to run in this sort of orchestration. Another advantage is that it also promotes productivity, right? And that's the reality is that many developers love command line interface, and some developers love the UI, but sometimes the UI gets on the way to get your job done. So that's why the CLI, you get the job done, you run your scripts directly from it, and you're all set. The other thing is you also can integrate it, so there is no need of a CLI. So you can have Eclipse plugins, IntelliJ IDEA. So you have all sorts of support in the industry for Maven. And last but not least, it's easy to configure and track changes. So the biggest benefit of this is that your source control becomes a single place of truth. You store the POM.xml and any other artifacts that are part of the API build machinery along with the API bundle code. So everything is in a single place that is available for any other environment such as your continuous integration environment. In addition to these benefits, it's about multi-language support. We already mentioned you can have Ruby, Python, JavaScript, Ruby, Scala, many other languages that or even shell scripts that run on this platform. And other benefits, it's backed up by the Apigee and the open source community. This plugin has been around 5 years, so there has been some development behind it. So you get the benefit of stepping on shoulders giant, basically. Other benefits is that it's ready for continuous integration. So automating the build is the first baby step to get into the continuous integration and continuous delivery, right? So once you get past this stage, you start thinking about how can I enable continuous integration and continuous delivery. That's the main goal of this plugin, so you can get rid of any manual steps and implement them in the deploy plugin. However, as we know, there are always trade-offs to any new technology, right? And the main is not inherent to the technology itself, but there is some learning curve around Maven itself. It's not the easiest platform, but everything has been done for you. There is no need to learn Maven itself. As you can see, you will see in the demo, as soon as you clone the repo, you should be able to start hitting your organization and start deploying bundles without writing a single line of code. And again, this is something Rakesh just mentioned. It's a little bit of being a little bit patient on this. It takes a few tries to get it right, but believe me, it's gonna take now it's being even easier because any other dependencies are taken out from the script, the plugin, so it's gonna be easier for you. And in addition to that, what we see so far is that the benefits outweigh any negatives by far. And at the end of the day, just relax. That's what Apigee is here for. We should be able to help you along the way, and customer success and support should be able to enable you with these tools. All right. So the next step is, how do I get started, right? This is all great, but how I can get my hands dirty with this? The first thing that you should learn is about the POM.xml structure, and then you have to learn how to configure multiple environments in the POM.xml. Then you should be able to deploy to multiple environments and run tests as part of the build. With that, I see so there are some prerequisites with Maven tool. There are not that many. You already have this access to all this because you're even with a freemium instance, you are able to deploy and use the same plugin. And you need Apache Maven 3.0 and superior. So here, this is a checklist that I will encourage you to use in case you want to try this plugin. The first step is to download and install Maven. The second step will be clone your plugin repo, then get into the folder and run this command, the last command. All right, so with that, Rakesh, we can get into the demo.
All right, let me get the presenting right.
I'll make you presenter.
All right. All right. Let me show you some basic things that you'll do with Maven. The idea is to have your code checked into one of the source control management. Now the idea is to push it into an environment using the Maven scripts. When you download the plugin, when you download the sample project, I would say sample project, it will look something like this. You'll have I call it a samples folder where you'll have your APIs. You'll have your target, which is your temporary folder to package everything. And you'll have under the samples, you'll have a parent POM. This is like the parent for all the proxies. And then you'll have a child POM. The basic idea is very simple here. You go and download the sample project. You download Maven 3.x. And then it should be as simple as you run this command and it should work. It's as simple as that. In the past, we had to, the customers had to go and get a username password. Now this is completely a public repo, so you don't need username password. That is one change you will see from the past. So it's very as simple as that. And it comes with a README file, and the README file lists some of the basic commands that you can do with this. So today in the demo, I'm going to run these commands and show you what you can do, but all these commands are in the README file here. Also, the README file lists the different options available for Maven. You have the clean, which will delete the last deployed version in the environment. Okay, when you choose the option clean, it will go and clean what is deployed. Then validate will validate the bundle and also import it. Then you have inactive, override, force, and update. Let me not go too much into those details. Update is more like override the existing version. So if you're deploying multiple times, you can use this. But if you're deploying and want to maintain an older version, then you don't use this option. You just use validate option. So I'll show you some of these things. From a structure perspective, what we're trying to show here is forecast weather API is your proxy. So you can go to Management UI and download your proxy and save it here. It's as simple as this. You have to just make sure you follow the structure. When you download, you get the API proxy. Just make sure you follow the structure and save it in the right place. So for now, this is your test proxy. And this test proxy has a couple of capabilities. One is I have this file, config.json. What it will do is, based on the environment, you can change values. These are some samples here. You got samples for test environment. These are the specific values. I don't need to go into these details. Very specific, very self-explanatory. If you take this policy, assign message policy, it's looking for this variable called environment and replaces it with test. If I want to show, if I can show you that policy, so this is what it's doing. It will replace this value with test. So different things, like in the proxies you can change your endpoints and targets too. Same thing, I have another set for plot. So this is the values which are specific to an environment. So when I run the test cases, I'll show you how it's being done. Then when it coming to a POM structure, the POM structure is straightforward. So in the parent POM, pom.xml, I have two different profiles. One is the test profile, another one is a plot profile. On the test profile, it has all the values that's required to deploy into a test environment, and in a plot profile, everything that's required into a plot. So everything that's common is in the parent profile, and then anything specific to the proxy, it's in the child profile, child pom.xml, which is this one. So if you look into this, what is specific? The only specific things is the JMeter test cases. So this sample project will also run some test cases for you, and I'll show you the results and how they look. So this is the specific portion for the proxy. All right, let me get into demo. All right. All right, so let me get commands. So this is a simple command to basically what I'm doing is I'm doing a Maven install, and I'm taking a test profile. This is my username of the enterprise. This is the password of the enterprise, of the org basically, and this is the actual org, and these are the options I'm going to use. So to begin with, let me just use a validate option. So the expectation here is it's going to build my proxy and import it into Apigee Enterprise, and then and deploy it into basically message processor. Let me run this, and I'll show you the UI too. All right, it's going on. Okay, so deployment is done. Now JMeter, it's running JMeter test cases, and it's on the test cases. So let me summarize for you what it's done on the UI. All right, so let me go back. This is the proxy I was working with. So what it's done is it's deployed revision 51. It's deployed revision 51 into test. And in its deployment, you can see deployment state. It's deployed in test environment, it's successful. And what also it's done is it's taken assign message policy and replaced the value with test. All right. And in the process, what it's done is it's on my JMeter test, and if I open that, so these are my tests, and all tests are successful in this case. So I got a 200 OK in each of these cases. So my 8 test cases are successful. So we could do this. This is the sample project that's out there in the the GitHub. So you can download it. It's a good starting point. Now, now for example, let me run this again. Okay. So when I run this again, what should happen? It will go and deploy in a new revision. My old revision was revision 51. So after this deployment, let's go and check what happened. Okay. So deployment is done. So let me switch my control. Now let me go back, refresh my screen. Okay. So I got a new revision, revision 52. Right. Again, if I verify, my assigned message is test, and the deployment status says good. It's under test. Test state is deployed. Now let me go back. Now let's say I want to, in a dev or test environment, you'll be doing this often. So then you use this option, update. Right, you do validate and update and run your entire build again. Right. So I have revision 52. Let me go back. Okay, build is successful, and I'll go back again, and I'll go back to my proxy, and I'll go check back. You can see it's still revision 52, and this is a good test. Environment is test, and deployment is successful test. Right. If you also notice, the plot is not deployed. So now if I want to deploy to plot, it's as simple as switching to options. What I can do is, so all of this has default values. Only if you want to override, you can use the command line arguments like this. Okay, so if you want to change from test to plot, so before I do that, let me see what version of plot is deployed. Okay, revision 50 is deployed, right, for plot. So let me go back, and what I'll do is, instead of doing update, what I'll do is I'll just deploy as a new revision. So I'll remove this update option and hit enter. So let me go back to my screen, refresh my screen. Okay, so it's successful. Let me check my test cases if it's on or not. Make sure it's all good. Okay, so it's all good. It's deployed in plot. Let me make sure from the UI it is good. Okay, it's deployed in plot now, and it's revision 53. Before it was revision 50, it's got a new one. And then let's look at the policy. The policy has environment as plot. So what we are doing is, basically based on the environment, we are using a config file to change values. You can use config file to change multiple things. I showed you one example on a policy, but if I look at my config, there's some samples for changing your proxy default XML file. It uses XPath values, and you can go to your base path and change the value. Same thing for changing targets, you can do that. For example, in plot, what's happening is there's some examples to look at. You can look at, this is the one which kicked in. You can also look at replacing any caching values that you want to change. Depending on the environment, you can change the caching values, or you can change your proxies, your target values. You can control all that here. So that's what we have. Basically, there are a few more commands I'll just show you. So this is the meat of this presentation to give you a starting place where you can have your Maven setup. What we've done is last few days, what we've done is we have simplified this a lot. Before it used to be a little bit tricky. Now it's as simple as downloading and running the commands. You can use the README file. That's a good starting place. And also probably it will be simplified further in the next couple of weeks. Things will get better and better, but what we have now is a very good place to start Maven. I'll show you some more commands that will help you. Let me go back to my README file. All right, here. So there are other commands here. So we went through this using the validate option. You can configure package, import, deploy, and test the bundle. If you want to keep a revision, you use validate/update. You can use, if you want to delete your current bundle that is deployed, you can use a clean option. You can do that. So we deployed pod, so let me use the option clean. Okay. Okay, let me go check what's happening here. This is one thing we need to look. So let me skip that part. Then you have an option just to package, not to import. You can package it as a zip file and just keep it, or you can just use this option, to run your tests and figure out what's going on without doing any deployment. So if I do that, so this option just runs the JMeter. When I hit enter, okay, so let me clear this. Let me re-import it. So everything is good. So this is how you can start with packaging the API files, API bundle, importing it into either the enterprise Apigee or on-prem Apigee. You control that using your POM files where it needs to go. After you deploy, you can validate using some functional tests. And also in the process, when you're deploying, you can change values depending on your environment. So we covered these 4 things in the Maven script. You can obviously take it to the next step by using Jenkins, where you can push the build and also use some continuous integration tools to run this test automatically. So this entire infrastructure will give you a place where you can push good code, solid code into your production environment much faster, much quicker. All right. I think, Dan, we can open up for any questions.
We got a few questions from Kameshwar. One of the questions is about the URL to get this code. Maybe we can quickly go through the browser and show where this sample can be obtained from.
Okay.
And so the nodes that you have, these are great. If we can show them where they can run all these commands.
Yeah. So once you download, let me get my browser up. So let me go here. Let me get this. So this is the URL. Let me paste this for everyone. Okay. So once you download, you go here, you either clone or you can download. Once you get the starting project, then go to the README file the README file has instructions on how to get started.
Right. And I will encourage you to get to the README file. This has a lot of information about in-depth how you can organize your bundles, but for the sake of this presentation, we kept it simple. So the sample that it's under a forecast weather JMeter has the README file with 3 simple steps that you can execute very quickly and get this up and running. That will give you an idea of how easy it is to get this on your desktop. Another question that was asked was about the difference on on-prem customers. There's since you need to the pom.xml has the URLs to deploy your APIs, right? So there are some parameters in the pom parent.xml.
Why don't I show that? You know, we can
exactly. Let's show the location and yes, the parameter that needs to be passed. Right there, exactly. The host URL needs to point to the actual management API of your host name, and everything else should be pretty straightforward. There is nothing hard-coded or anything in the code that should prevent you from running it from your environment. And if there are any questions on any items in here, feel free to open a Stack Overflow question. We should be able to find an answer for you. Let's take a look at other questions. There was an earlier question about the URL that was pointing to Apigee, Apigee repo port 8081. That issue has been fixed, and this can be fixed by just pull the latest changes from the repo and run the command again, and try to run the forecast weather JMeter sample, which has the latest code. Another question from Rahul was about where can I email it to. I will encourage to use the Stack Overflow community. The Apigee tag should be able to, you should be able to post any questions there.
Any further questions? Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Hey, Rakesh, just a quick question. You know, I know that recently we switched, or we recently released the Maven build as part of a GitHub repo, a public GitHub repo, which replaced the private repo that we had within Apigee. So I just wanted to see if you guys might be able to just comment on that just briefly. You know, folks that were retrieving the builds from, or the Maven plugin from Apigee directly can now go to GitHub to get that.
Right. Let me answer that. So before it used to be more controlled repo. I won't say it's private. So there was a username, password, and the customer had to go to support and get a username, password. Now since it's public repo, I'll show you my settings file. You know how simple it's become. You know, so this is my settings.xml. When compared to old one, it was a whole lot. So this is the default settings.xml. There's nothing new that's required. So you can see how simplified this has become now. That's a big change that we have now. It's completely public repo.
Okay, I think what we might do is open for some discussion with some of the folks on the line. So I think what we can do is allow some folks to ask questions directly, verbally. So let me see if we can do that here. So we have it looks like Nick Jasinski has a question. So Nick, I've unmuted you.
Yeah, I have no question.
Oh, you don't? Okay, I saw your hand raised. So.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to look for messages.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Okay. I think we also potentially could ask Rahul. Rahul, I can unmute you and see if you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask. Rahul, is there anything that you would like to ask specifically?
Hi. Yeah. So this has been a great session. I've been playing around with this plugin for the past couple of days, intermittently, trying to get stuff. So I can reach till the point where I've set my own JSON and I can create the replacement and all of that. But I'm having earlier I did not realize that it was inactive. The goal I thought it was active, but now when I change it, I keep getting like unrecognized SSL message, plain text connection, and it doesn't deploy. So I was wondering on what could be the possible at my parent form. I mean, it's pointing to my management server, so I don't see why it should.
Hey Rahul, I think we're having a little trouble with your connection today. You're coming through a bit pixelated via verbally, so I think maybe what we should do is just ask you to just go ahead and contact Apigee directly to see if we can assist you with your problem. So Diego, it looks like we have another question that came in recently that is there a specific privilege that a user requires for the Maven to deploy a code to on-premise?
That's right. Yeah, the user that needs to have permissions to deploy bundles, and well, if you tried an org admin, yeah, you should be able to deploy with no issues. But if you have access to the role-based access control, you should be able to enable the role with deployment access and be able to deploy any bundle. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
What Rakesh just described is showing right now. It's that checkbox that you see right there on that production and test environment. It needs to be checked off.
So you can control access. You don't have to give org admin role to a deployer. You can control what you want, and then only because this will be more like an automated user, you want to give that user only what is required.
Okay, I think we may have exhausted at least the majority of the questions that we have today. And if you've had some questions that you've posted in the questions dialog box and we were not able to address them, we'll catalog the questions that were posted and follow up with on those questions after we conclude the webinar session today. So having said that, I think Rahul, Diego, I think you've got the slide deck still, so
That's right.
I'm going to make you a presenter again, and we can conclude the webinar session today.
Can you see my screen?
I can indeed.
All right. Let me just make sure that we got the. Okay. 1 second. I don't see the. Are you seeing the presentation?
I did briefly, Diego. If you, yep. And now we see the split screen. So swap displays, I think, is what you want to do.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
All right. So, yeah, I think we briefly covered Apigee resources. So there are Apigee resources where you can block the more questions, ask for more questions. In particular, the Stack Overflow, we mentioned that's kind of like the most effective way to cover these questions and keep the community tight. So please go ahead and ask those questions. The customer success and support should be able to provide an answer on those. And that's pretty much from me. The other thing is I believe that the recording, Dan, I think it will be posted as Dan mentioned.
That's correct.
Yes.
So we're recording today's session once again, and we typically get those posted, the recordings posted within a week, and we send out a link to that as well to the folks who registered. So we'll be doing that. So usually doesn't take a week. Usually we target between 3 and 5 days. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, we're looking for ideas for future topics, and we've gotten some good suggestions so far. So please email your ideas for future topics to customersuccess@apigee.com, as well as keep an eye out for our future webinar sessions in the monthly customer digest email that we've been sending out. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Diego. So I also wanted to mention, and you may have gotten some emails for folks that are on the line. You may have gotten some emails about this already, but Apigee is hosting an I Love APIs conference again for this year, 2014. It's going to be September 8th through the 10th in September 2014, and the link for registering is is.gd/ILoveAPIs 2014. It's going to be over 1,200 global digital leaders in the API space. There's going to be plenty of networking opportunities. It's going to be in San Francisco at Fort Mason, same place it was last year. There's going to be 5 tracks with over 40 sessions, including digital transformation strategy, APIs, predictive, big data analytics, 2 parallel coder workshops, and we're also going to have an Internet of Things and a partner exhibit. So there'll be some real-world examples of how APIs are put into action. So it'd be great to see you guys out there at the conference this year. We had an awesome participation last year. Looking forward to an even better one this year. Having said that, that concludes today's Ask the Expert session. So once again, thank you guys very much for joining, and have an awesome Wednesday. And look forward to doing the next one in a month. Keep an eye out for the invitations for those. Thank you very much, Diego and Rakesh, for discussing Maven today.
Thank you.